One. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Foley with Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, and welcome to our webinar Festivals and Events Information Session with the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador Public Health. Today we are joined by Douglas House and his team. Douglas is a certified public health inspector who has worked with the provincial government since 1998. He currently works with the Department of Health and Community Service and reports to the Chief Medical Officer as the Manager of Environmental Public Health. In his role, Douglas supports and monitors the Public Health Inspection Program, develops provincial public health guidelines and policies, and participates on various committees at the provincial and federal level. He enjoys playing piano, hiking, and spending time with his wife and 4 children. On June 2nd, the provincial government released the Together Again plan. The plan outlines tentative timelines for relaxing the long-term public health measures, including travel, self-isolation, and gathering sizes. So today, the first 20 minutes, Douglas will present details for your group or community if they're planning to offer an event or festival. After that, we've allotted some time for questions and answers from Douglas. So without further ado, Douglas, take it away and welcome.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you to Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador and the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation for organizing this session, and for all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend today. I hope that the information that I'll be presenting today will be helpful to you as you continue to prepare for the upcoming tourist season. So I'm going to move ahead to my next slide. Here we are. So in this presentation, I'd like to cover 3 main topics. So starting off, I'll give a brief overview of the Together Again reopening plan. Then I'll get into some of the public health guidelines that are available on our COVID-19 website, and finish off with some other resources that are available for event organizers and businesses. So by now, I think everyone is probably familiar with the COVID-19 alert level system, and this was released on April 30th in 2020. So I won't get into this system, but it will continue to be in place as we reopen. And it is possible that these levels could move up or down as needed if we start to see local outbreaks occurring. So let's get into our reopening plan. So on June 2nd, the provincial government released the Together Again reopening plan. And the plan provides an overview of the phased approach that will be taken as we start to lift long-term public health measures. So you'll see there on the slide, we're currently in the transition phase, which is June 15th to July 1st. Step 1 could occur as early as July 1st, Step 2 as early as August 15th, and Step 3 as early as September 15th. And these timelines are subject to change, and the movement between the steps will be based on the continued success of our COVID-19 immunization plan, as well as evidence that vaccines are effective in reducing hospitalizations. We're seeing controlled spread of COVID-19 and variants of concern. We continue to have an ability to test, trace, and isolate cases of COVID-19, and our health system continues to be ready to handle any surge in cases. So let's look first at the transition phase. And at this point, it's important to explain what we mean by gatherings. So gatherings are a group of people brought together at the same time and same place for the same duration. And some examples of this would be sports events, music concerts, or religious or cultural ceremonies. And this is different from the regular capacities that we've provided for restaurants or retail stores, for example. We also have a difference between formal gatherings and personal gatherings. So formal gatherings would be organized by a recognized business or organization, while personal gatherings are, for example, a group of friends or family members who are just getting together for a social time. So in the transition phase, outdoor gatherings are now limited to 150 people, and provided that physical distancing can be maintained. Indoor formal gatherings are continue to be at 100 people with physical distancing. Now new in the transition phase, we do allow community fireworks, parades, and outdoor ceremonial events to occur without any limit on the number of people participating, provided that physical distancing can be supported at those events as well. For personal gatherings, we now allow outdoor gatherings of up to 30 people in total, while indoor gatherings remain limited to the household members plus their close, consistent personal contacts, or their steady 20, as we've called them. For recreational activities, we now allow outdoor sports tournaments. And we've also indicated to offices and workplaces that they can begin to gradually return to those offices and workplaces. And an add-on, of course, that we're now familiar with is the Atlantic bubble, and that started just yesterday. So this means that residents of the Atlantic provinces can come into Newfoundland and Labrador without any requirement for self-isolation or testing, provided that they haven't traveled outside of the Atlantic region in the last 14 days. So let's move on to step number 1. And as I say, this could be as early as July 1st with all those conditions that I described earlier. So here we see the big change with respect to travel. So on July 1st, we're hoping we'll see non-essential travel permitted into the province. And there will be some conditions for self-isolation and testing depending on their vaccination status. And that's described on our website. And of course, the federal rules for international travel will also apply for those travelers. Formal gatherings will increase in size. For outdoors, it'll be 250 people. And indoors, it would be the lesser of 200 or 75% of the regular capacity, again, with physical distancing in place. Personal gatherings for outdoors will increase to 50 people, while the indoor gatherings will continue to be the household members and their steady 20. We'll also see a change for restaurants and lounges, who will be able to increase their capacity to 75%, provided that physical distancing can be maintained between people seated at adjacent tables. And for offices and workplaces, we are advising that small in-person meetings can be held at this time. Step 2, as early as August 15th. Again, we'll see some further relaxation of the self-isolation and testing requirements for travelers. I won't get into the details here, but you can again refer to our website for those details. Formal gatherings will increase again. For outdoors, it will be 500 people. Indoors will be 350 people. And for personal gatherings, the only limit would be what you can fit with physical distancing maintained for those gatherings. Again, restaurants and lounges will be able to increase their capacity based only on physical distancing at that time. And we'll also see a change for any businesses that have dance floors. At that point, we'll allow those dance floors to be reopened. And offices and workplaces will be advised that in-person meetings and conferences can be held at that point. Finally, in step 3, which is mid-September, there will be even further relaxation of self-isolation and testing requirements for travelers. Outdoor gatherings will have no number associated with them. Again, it will be only limited to what you can physically distance. And we are reserving our guidance for indoor gatherings at this time. We're going to look at the evidence over the summer and the experiences of other jurisdictions and make a determination as we approach that date. And again, personal gatherings will continue to be limited only by physical distancing. And again, at this point, we're hoping that offices and workplaces will be back to normal with appropriate protocols in place for COVID-19. So you can expect to see a little more guidance as we approach that date. So that brings us to festivals and events. So what does all this mean for summer festivals and events? Well, festivals and events can go ahead safely with proper planning. And of course, the usual licenses and permits that you're used to will still be required. So for example, anything related to food safety, liquor licensing, your usual hand washing stations and washroom requirements, all of that will still be in place. And we would encourage you to reach out to the Department of Digital Government and Service NL or the Newfoundland Labrador Liquor Corporation as you normally would for those permits. No extra permission would be required for any gatherings that fall within the limits that we've identified in our alert levels or the reopening plan, provided that you're following the public health guidelines as well. However, if you do plan to have an event that you expect would include a gathering that exceeds the set limits, then we would expect you to prepare a organizational plan for that event. And that would need to go through the Department of Digital Government and Service NL. And we can also coordinate that contact through healthinfo@gov.nl.ca. So really what we're hoping to do there is to provide you some guidance as you prepare that event or that gathering and give you some tips and pointers on how you can do that safely with reference to our public health guidelines. So that brings us now to our resources and guidelines. And these are all available on the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador COVID-19 website. And I'm sure you've visited this for various reasons. We recently updated the website and we think it's much better organized now with various topics across the green header. So most of the guidance that you'll find here are under the Employers or Life During COVID-19 tabs. So let's move first to the Employers tab. And there's dozens of guidelines available to you for a variety of businesses and industry sectors. And of particular note, I'll just draw your attention to the guidelines that are highlighted on the page here, which would include guidance for physical distancing, cleaning and disinfection, indoor entertainment, theaters and performing arts venues, restaurants and lounges, community museums and historic sites, as well as some training information for employees for COVID-19, and some printable resources. So there's signs available for businesses to print off and post in their facilities. On the Life During COVID-19 tab, you'll find other guidance documents, such as guidance for events, outdoor drive-in events, trade shows and events, and public markets. So all of these guidelines could be applicable to the event that you're planning, depending on what you intend to have at that event. What I will tell you, I won't get into the specifics of all these guidelines at this time, but what I will tell you is that many of these helpful hints are throughout all of these guidelines, as they're common public health messages that we are trying to convey in all of these guideline documents. So for example, you recommend that you post signs to remind people to stay home if they're showing symptoms of COVID-19. And again, there's printable resources like that available on the website. We would inform businesses that outdoor events are less risky than indoor events. And so we would encourage you to hold activities outdoors as much as possible. We would also encourage you to follow the limits for gathering sizes and business capacities where applicable, and to promote physical distancing at all times. And this could include places like at kiosks, in areas where there's seating or standing occurring, at concessions, and other locations at the event. And some things that you could use to remind people to physical distance could be floor markers or painted lines, having separate tables, physical barriers, directional arrows for one-way foot traffic, and having separate entrances and exits to, again, to facilitate that one-way traffic. Some other helpful hints could include, well, obviously, masks are required in indoor public spaces with some exceptions. And so again, signage would be helpful for your attendees at events. Encourage hand washing and sanitizing by offering hand washing stations or hand sanitizer. This could be at entrances and exits, as well as throughout the facility or in the event area. We would encourage you to use online registration and ticket sales if possible, and to avoid handling cash. But again, recognizing that some people may not be able to use credit cards, and so cash may be required in some cases. Where practical, we would request that you collect contact information to support contact tracing if that was needed by public health, and to keep that information for up to 14 days. We would also advise you to clean and disinfect any frequently touched surfaces like door handles, tables, and other surfaces at least twice a day using Health Canada approved disinfectants. And finally, avoid self-serve buffets and any shared utensils or equipment, such as water jugs or condiment dispensers. So that brings us to other available resources for businesses and event planners. And one of the main points of contact for you would be the business response team. And you can find their contact information under the Employers tab. And they are available through the Department of Tourism, I believe, is where they're set up. They've been there ever since, or very early on, since the pandemic began. And you can reach them through their email address that's provided there at the top of the page, or the phone number. And they're available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So they are quite familiar with all the guidance documents and will be able to give you quick and easy answers. And when they don't have the answers, they have a contact point through public health to get great further details. Other sources of information that are available to you would be people like environmental health officers or occupational health and safety officers with the Department of Digital Government and Service NL. And while they are enforcement officers, no doubt, they are also there to support you with information and to provide you guidance on what's available and what we would direct through public health. The Newfoundland Labrador Liquor Corporation also has liquor inspectors who can answer questions related to liquor licensing and capacities in liquor establishments. As well, there's an email address for the Department of Health Community Services, and there's a team of people that are able to provide responses through that email. And again, they're quite busy answering questions on a daily basis. So I would encourage you to reach out through that email address. So that brings us to the end of my presentation. And again, I'll have all of these contact points are available on this slide, as well as some phone numbers for the government service centers in each of the 3 regions. So at this point, I'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thanks very much, Douglas. So I guess for everybody in attendance, if you have any questions, we'd ask you to use the question box down at the bottom of your screen. In addition to Douglas being able to answer, he has a team with him to perhaps type some answers to some common questions. So we'll open it up. If anybody has any questions, please put it in the question and answer box. Well, there's a question in the chat, Douglas, that says, will this information be sent to towns by email? Um, I don't know if you have a plan. We can certainly help facilitate that. We did share information with our good partner MNL, who helped spread the word. Also, we're recording this right now, so that could be made available as a resource. I think the idea is probably to share this as broadly as we can, as opposed to keep it to ourselves. So I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Yeah, for sure. We can send out, the PDF version of this presentation, if that would be helpful. It would be a smaller size for sharing, and I can send that to municipalities NL for distribution as well.
And Deetra is on there as a good partner, saying she'd be happy to help with that, which is great.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so we'll make sure that gets out. Do we have any other questions? Can you send it to? Yes, we'll send it to everybody who's online, because we do have a list of registrations. We'll make sure that gets out. Contact tracing. In what context is that necessary? Visitors attending an indoor space where distancing has been observed, or other?
So we would encourage any organizers of formal gatherings to request contact information for the purposes of contact tracing if necessary. Um, and it's really up to public health to determine how that information is used during an outbreak situation. And they will consider the public health measures that are in place at the event when they provide advice to people who attend those functions. They may consider whether masks were worn or not worn, whether physical distancing was supported, and they will base their advice on that information. So I would encourage anyone organizing a gathering to collect that information.
And Douglas, the old Hilroy scribbler seems to be a preferred way. Are there any other technical wizardry to help with that you've observed?
Um, I know there are electronic means to collect that information, and QR codes have been used in some jurisdictions, I know, as well. I don't know if that's available in our province, but certainly something that people could look into if you're doing that on a regular basis. If you're just having a one-time event, that's probably a little bit over the top, and maybe just a simple paper form and someone to collect that information at the entryway, that may be sufficient.
Can you hand out concessions at community events?
So handing out concessions, do you mean food concession? I would guess that would be food, handing out food items.
I would assume so.
Yeah, so if you're planning to provide food, I think, the regular food safety requirements are still in place. So again, I would encourage you to talk to an environmental health officer about that. If it's a not-for-profit, for example, there are guidelines for not-for-profit organizations providing food. If you're a business providing food services, you need to follow the food premises regulations. And at this time, again, we're not allowing self-serve buffet style food service, but individually wrapped food items could be picked up from a table, for example, or handed out by a server. So that is an option available, yes.
For an outdoor event, can you define physical distancing? Who is responsible to ensure guests stay apart? And if they are in their bubble, is it the responsibility of the organization or the individual?
So I think, we all have a responsibility for this, individuals as well as organizers, but the role of the organizer, I would say, would be to promote physical distancing as much as possible. So again, we encourage people to use signage to remind attendees about physical distancing, physical markers to, again, have that, promoting physical distancing in that way. If you have seating areas, have them arranged with physical distancing in mind. But again, the individuals themselves have to be responsible for maintaining physical distancing. So there comes a point where, that responsibility does shift to the individual. If organizers see people gathering together and perhaps they shouldn't be, I think it's worth a reminder and, certainly you can speak to individuals who may be gathering and encourage them to separate. But we do recognize there comes a point where that responsibility lies with the individuals themselves.
When we reach the final step in September, what will be the rules around things such as demonstrations and games, video games, board games, and so on? uh, would you expect? Also, if we don't reach that step by mid-September, what would be the rule around them if we're still in the previous step? I believe such things aren't allowed at the moment.
Yeah, good question. And it may be a little bit too early for maybe to be able to give you a clear answer on that. Mid-September, I know it's only a couple months away, but in COVID years, that's a long time. And, a lot can change between now and then. We are looking at what's happening in other jurisdictions, and we're looking at the evidence as it plays out over the summer months. And hopefully we will be able to relax some of those recommendations with respect to board games, card games, other indoor recreational activities, and we'll update our guidelines as we can relax those measures. So I think probably the best thing I can say at this point is just to keep checking back on our website and look for updates as we do those.
Certainly, and when we get those, we'll share that to the group as well. Sylvie, I need more clarification on your question. What is acceptable around offering workshops? So if you can type in a clarification to that. But Selena wants to know, for an event with an outdoor barbecue food truck, are masks required?
So masks are not required outdoors. Our special measures order only applies to indoor public spaces. However, we would recommend that if people are not able to physically distance as well as they would like to, that they should consider wearing a mask in those situations. So if you find yourself in a crowded area outdoors, you may consider wearing a mask at that time.
At certain events, would you recommend selling tickets in forms of a bubble table where attendees could purchase tickets within their bubble and only people within that bubble would be seated at that respective table? Or would you encourage single tickets and physical distancing between each seat?
I think the approach of selling to a family or a household family and their close contacts is a good idea. If you are seated at a table, the only way we would really recommend sitting together without physical distancing is if you're with your close contacts. So I think if you're selling tickets and trying to maximize the use of your table space, it makes sense to sell in groups in that way. So that would be my recommendation there to maximize your table space. Otherwise, you're really limiting what you can offer in terms of your capacity.
A question from someone I used to work with years ago. Do you require do you require contact tracing for outdoor events? From Rodney Drake.
Any gathering, whether it's indoors or outdoors, we would encourage people to collect that contact information. Yes.
Okay. Sylvie says, for our Grossmore Fall Fest, we offer workshops. Just wondering what the guidelines would be in reference to us having workshops. So, Sylvie, I'm assuming that means not serving food or anything, just having a group assembled uh, indoors. I don't know if you have an interpretation, Douglas, of what I
Yeah.
just read.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so an indoor workshop like that, there's probably a couple of different guidelines that might apply in that situation. You might look at the indoor recreation guidelines for reference. There's also the worker and workplace training guidelines that are available on our website. And either one of those really could be applied and would have much the same information as well for how to hold that event safely.
Okay. Here's a popular one around dance floors. You said dance floors are able to open. Would the stadium floor be considered a dance floor if we had a band playing, or is that only for lounges and bars?
So right now, our special measures orders apply to dance floors in lounges, I believe is how we've identified it in the order. And so that order will change in step 2. So right now, our recommendations for dances at weddings, for example, currently we don't allow or don't recommend or don't allow, I suppose, dancing at weddings. And in step 1, we will allow dancing at weddings. So really, it's about that order for lounges where they have dance floors and have patrons dancing on a regular basis. So holding a dance at the stadium, it sort of falls outside of the order, but again, we wouldn't recommend a dance like that at this time. So I think our recommendation would be to hold off on holding dances at this time.
Okay, a local legion wants to know when we open for dancing or social events, can the bartender serve bar, or do they provide table service and a barrier between the bar and the public?
Now that might be a question for the Liquor Corporation. Um, in my guess, my best guess here, I believe that bar service is available. Like people can stand at the bar as provided they're physically distanced. So I believe that is the case. But I would recommend that you reach out to the Liquor Corporation just to get clarification on that.
Will the number of attendees limit? Will the number of attendees limit be how many people are attending an event at one time or over the period of the event? For example, if there's a market style event where people walk through and leave again versus how many attended the event all day?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess the thought is there, a market event is almost similar to a retail store. And, currently we don't have a limit on capacity for stores provided they have physical distancing. So in public market spaces, you could take the same approach and, allow people to come and go, provided physical distancing is maintained. And really it's up to the organizers of those markets to determine what can be safely attained in that space. And so what space is available for physical distancing and what would be the acceptable number based on that space. So, you may still want to have someone at the entryway keeping tabs on how many people come and go. But the limits for those particular markets wouldn't necessarily need to follow the gathering limits. I'm taking a chance on saying that here now, but I would refer you back to the public market guidelines in any event, because I do think we have information there in that guidance document about that.
What about games of chance? Are there any regulations with 3 tickets holding up the wheel?
So I'm not sure about the question there. Could you?
No.
Yeah.
3 tickets holding up the wheel. Anyway, games of chance. Are there any regulation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Obviously, you don't go to the regatta.
I think currently I wouldn't be able to speak on what the lottery licensing is saying at this point. It's best to check with Digital Government and Service NL on that. They would be the ones that provide the permitting for games of chance. So I think it's best to contact them.
Okay. We're planning an outdoor event for the end of July. I believe you said the limit for outdoors 250. If it rains and we go with an event indoors, would we be able to let 200 people in? And if we advertise an open house, would we have to keep track of how many people come and go if we don't do a pre-registration?
Right. So if you are planning an outdoor event and need to have a contingency plan for bad weather, I think it would be wise to limit your numbers to the 200 limit for that step. We wouldn't want people to be turned away because of bad weather. I think it would be wise to limit it to the 200 for indoor gatherings. If you are offering an event where people come and go, it's not, a set time, sit down event. like a concert, for example. Again, I think you would want to limit the numbers based on the space available indoors and keep tabs on who's coming and going, and to limit that number based on that indoor facility. So again, not exceeding the indoor capacity for that facility.
Do we need to do contact tracing at our restaurant and craft store?
Restaurants, yes, would be encouraged to collect contact information if that's possible at all. Again, it's voluntary. People don't have to provide that information, but we would ask restaurant owners to request the information. If you have a reservation system, that could be used as well for collecting that information. Craft stores, we would consider retail, and we don't require retail store owners to collect contact information. So if you are open for restaurant service, table service, yes, we would ask for it, but no for the retail side.
Another question for September. We're planning for how things are now, but feel they'll allow more things by then and can adapt if they do. The website says the mask requirements will be evaluated after mid-September. Would this include either indoor masks or physical distancing requirements?
I think, for the fall, all of these public health measures will be reconsidered, and that includes masks as well as physical distancing. I think all of that is sort of on the table at this point, and we are discussing that currently with regards to our direction for the fall. So yes, we will be looking at it over the summer months and provide additional guidance for the fall.
Just going to move this window a little bit, of course. Is there a formula to follow to decide how many can be in a certain size space for indoor or outdoor come and go events? So for instance, if there's an area that's 5,000 square feet, how many can fit in that space?
So we haven't adopted any kind of formula like that. We've only provided the guidance that people maintain 6 feet of distance between between households or their close contacts. So I guess, you could look at the radius of a circle as your reference point and calculate the square footage around an individual. But that does become tricky for groups of people who, again, may be close, consistent contacts. So it's a difficult question for me to answer. And I think you really just need to think about the space that's available and make that determination yourself based on who you would expect to attend.
For a Legion that hosts bingo and they open up, can they open the canteen for drinks and bars and chips? Or do they need someone to take contact tracing at the door?
I don't recall what we say for our indoor entertainment guidelines about food service. So I think it'd be best for you to just refer to those guidelines for indoor entertainment. So that would be my answer for that piece. And contact tracing, yes, I would say for a bingo event, again, it's a gathering, and we would encourage people to collect that information at the door.
And again, for contact tracing, what about a tourism site where you're accepting visitors from out of province and it's a continual churn of people?
That's a good question as well. I think for a tourism site like that, people are probably not there for very long. They probably there for some quick guidance and question and answer. I don't really see that as a gathering as such. And so I don't see the need for collecting contact information in the same way that I would for, a formal gathering or a restaurant or that kind of thing. So I don't think it would be necessary in that situation.
One of Douglas's team, Jason, just posted those guidelines in the question and answer, no, in the chat window. So if anybody wants those, just go in and follow that link. What about visitors to museums? And it'd be an indoor museum.
Right. There's guidelines available on the website for community museums and historic sites. So again, I'd refer you to those guidelines.
And do staff need to wear masks now if running an outside event for children?
Uh, Outside events. So that's, again, outdoor activities. Masks are not required. Um, However, we do have some guidelines again for day camps and after school programs. So again, I refer you to those guidelines. I believe the guidelines say that if staff members are in close contact with children attending those events, that they should consider wearing a mask. But again, I think just to confirm, I think you should have a look at those guidelines.
And Douglas, I believe we've reached the last of our questions. I'll just give it
Okay.
one more call just to see if there's any more. Not seeing any. You've been very clear, Douglas.
Okay. And again, if you do have any other questions after this presentation, you can certainly send an email to the healthinfo@gov.nl.ca email address. And there's a team of people there that can redirect your questions as necessary. There's also the business response team with their email and telephone number as well. So, encourage you to use those resources.
One very specific, is there a limit to the number of people you can have at a bike parade?
Bike parades.
If you tell me you have guidelines written for bike parades, I'm going to be terribly impressed.
We do have guidance for parades, but not specific to bike parades. Interesting question. For community parades, we've said there's no limit. I'm not sure if that extends to bicycle parades. I think I'd have to check with my public health colleagues on that one, and probably get some more details about the event that you're planning.
As you outlined, much of this is dependent on vaccination level and hitting certain things. The question is, if we hit 75% with second vaccination doses, will we see restrictions lift quicker?
Good question. These timelines, again, are adjustable. Now, I can't say for sure if it would be any quicker. I think that's something that the public health team would have to consider if we did reach that level of vaccination at an earlier date. I think we'd certainly need to have that discussion, but I wouldn't be able to give you a definitive answer at this time.
Again, Rod is asking if there are large fireworks. First of all, are large firework shows permitted if it's advertised that people stay in their vehicles or their bubbles?
So for community fireworks, yes, they are permitted. We have no limit on the number of people that can attend community fireworks. If this is a private fireworks display, I would suggest that is probably not in our guidance for unlimited participation. I think that would be something we would consider as a formal gathering in that situation if it's a private display. So I would think there, in that case, we'd have to limit it to the outdoor gatherings limits.
If we do an open house and invite everyone without pre-registration, we would have to keep track of how many people come in and turn people away at the cutoff, correct?
So could you repeat that, Greg? Sorry.
Yep. So they're advertising an open house and they're just throwing it out to the public without a pre-registration. Would we have to keep track of how many people come in and then turn people away at the cutoff limit?
I would say that that is likely. If you have a limited space and you're opening it up for anyone to come and visit, that space can't hold an infinite capacity. So you need to consider who can be safely physically distanced in that space. So if you reach that safe capacity, you would definitely have to turn people away at that point. So I think if you're planning an event, in an indoor space, you would need to consider who may attend. And if it's, a formal gathering of some sort, I think a registration process would probably be advised for that.
And just to build on this out of my own curiosity, could people queue, like if it becomes a bit of a flow through
Yeah.
and then become more like a market?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've seen that, of course, in retail stores and other venues as well. People can queue up outside, but if you expect a large number of people, that could be discouraging if they have to wait for a long time outside. And of course, physically distancing outside is also a consideration there too. If people are having to queue up, you would need to remind them to physically distance outdoors as well.
And we've completed this. One more call. Any more questions? And I'm not seeing any. Listen, thank you very much, Douglas, and of course to Jason and Loyola who are also here answering questions, and really for the provincial government, for both TCAR and your department for leading this webinar and bringing it together. This session continues our knowledge regarding reopening our tourism enterprises and continues educating our industry and how to operate within a pandemic. Also, thank you to the members and industry professionals who attended today. Please keep an eye out for any future webinars on the GNL website. Additionally, please reach out to any of the GNL staff should you have any further questions. They'd be happy to speak with you regarding your business needs. So on that note, just to remind everyone, we will forward the PDF to the group. There will be a recording made available, and I'd even suggest to people, if you know that they could have used this information, you be proactive and reach out to them and let them know those resources are available. Any final words, Douglas?
No, just to say thank you to everyone who attended, and thank you to Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador for arranging this today. And it's been great to be able to present this information to you. Thank you.
Thank you for today. And again, on behalf of everyone, thank you to you and your team. Bring it back. You've done an awful lot of good work in the last 15 months, and we certainly appreciate all you've done for us.
Okay, thank you.